Hi everyone, this is Kay. Welcome to the Fall 2012 McKinney-Vento Update Training. I thought that this would be the most convenient way for you guys to just get the updates, get the needed information, and not have to leave your buildings for a couple of hours at a time. The law is the same, the procedures are the same, McKinney-Vento guidelines are the same, but again, this is required, so I wanted to put this in a convenient little package for you that you could watch at your convenience at your schools. So thanks for taking the time to do that. Alright, so these are the things that we will be reviewing today. McKinney-Vento statistics, why the law exists, who's eligible and how we identify those who are eligible, what the responsibilities are for the school liaisons, and then some really important reminders, and they are reminders, but the ones that I need to keep saying over and over because we haven't all implemented them yet. So they're very important to hear as we all get on the same page. Alright, for our statistics, as we can see, the numbers keep increasing. It keeps increasing nationally, it's increasing locally. This is with homelessness in general and with our McKinney-Vento students. Nationally, there's about 3.5 million people a year who experience homelessness. About 1.5 million of those are children. And during the 2010-2011 school year, over 1 million homeless students were identified in school. That was the first year that nationally that number has gotten over 1 million. Locally, the most recent counts I have were the summer 2012, and that was 6,800 homeless in our county. Last school year, the 11-12 school year, we identified 4,922 McKinney-Vento students. That was pre-K through 12th grade. It is the most that we've ever identified in CMS, but I am optimistic in that the increase was not as great from the year before. It was an increase of about 4.5% from the previous school year, but the years prior to that was about almost a 6% increase. So it's an increase, but the increases went down, which I think is encouraging. And also what's encouraging is right now at this point in the school year, we do have a few hundred less identified McKinney-Vento students than we did at this point last school year. So who knows, maybe this will be the year that our numbers in the end don't go up. That would be good news for our kids and for their families and for our city and county in general. Alright, but why do numbers keep increasing? We talk about this a lot, about the stereotype of homelessness and who's homeless and why they're homeless. But if we ask ourselves some of these questions, and as you work with your staff on bringing a little more empathy to the situation, if you ask them some of these questions, it helps us to see why anyone at any time could become homeless. It's not just those who are lazy. It's not just those who we think should go out and get a job. It's not just those who have the stereotypical homeless characteristics. It could be any number of reasons why someone becomes homeless. Just think recently about the Hurricane Sandy in the Northeast, and now how many people and kids are homeless because of that. That could have happened to any of us. Just losing a job, having an illness where you don't have the benefits or compensation, just getting behind on monthly bills, and the further and further behind you go, there's going to be that time's going to come when you're not able to pay something and the lights get turned off, or you do get padlocked, or just any number of things. So keep these questions in your mind as you're working with your families, and also as you're working with your staff and bringing them awareness to what's going on. Because we know, again, there are a bunch of factors that contribute to homelessness. The top two are poverty and the lack of affordable housing. So in 2012, the poverty guidelines for a family of 4 was just over $23,000. That is the biggest cause of homelessness. And then you pair that with the lack of affordable housing, and we can see why so many folks don't have housing. I mean, right now in our city, you need at least twice the minimum wage just to rent an apartment, or at least a decent apartment. You need twice the minimum wage, so we could have some very hardworking families, very hardworking parents who are working tirelessly, but because of the minimum wage, because of the low wages, you can see that's a reason for homelessness. They're never able to afford decent housing. And other causes of homelessness: mental illness, physical illness, divorce, job loss, domestic violence, drug or alcohol addiction, lack of child support, and again, it could be a natural fire or a disaster, or a natural disaster or a fire. Sorry. Okay, so we've got kids who are in homeless situations for any number of reasons, but I think we can all agree on whatever that reason is, it's not the kid's fault. And so what can we do here in the school to help the kids who are in these situations? Why does the McKinney-Vento law even exist? Well, it exists to remove the barriers for students enrolling, attending, and succeeding in school. As we know, as we have said time and time again, these homeless kids don't have the things they need to enroll in school. They don't have the paperwork. They don't have the 3 proofs of residence. They're homeless. How could they have 3 proofs of residence when they don't have a residence? They may not have their immunization records from where they came from before. They may not have the transportation to attend school. They may have fallen behind because of so many missed days. So McKinney-Vento exists to remove these barriers for enrolling, attending, and succeeding in school. And it does it by taking what's an unstable living situation and giving that kid a stable school environment so that there is something stable in that kid's life. It takes the uncertainty of where to go home. There are kids who on any given afternoon don't know where they're going to spend that night. So it takes the uncertainty of where you're going to go home that night, but when you wake up in the morning, that kid always can have the certainty of where he or she is going to go to school. It takes having a lack of space or materials to call their own. Think if you're in the shelter and you're sharing one room with 40 other people, or even if you're doubled up in someone's home and you're sleeping on their floor, or you're sharing one bed with your 3 siblings. You just don't have that space. You don't have that thing that's yours. So it takes that, and at school, there's a desk, there's materials, there are things there that the kid can call their own. And it takes that lack of routine and consistency, and it can give that child a stable, routine, consistent experience. All right, so these McKinney-Vento students, they do have rights, and it is our job as the school liaisons to uphold these rights and to make sure the students and families are aware of these rights and are given these rights. And these students have the right to immediate enrollment, even when the records aren't present. Just like we said, when they don't have those 3 proofs of residence, they are still entitled to immediate enrollment. If they don't have their immunization records, they're still entitled to immediate enrollment. Now, once they're enrolled, as far as immunizations go, they need to get those immunizations just like anyone else would, and we can help them by telling them about the different free opportunities and the different clinics and how to get those shots. But they can't be denied enrollment because of lack of paperwork and lack of some of these things. McKinney-Vento students have the right to remain in the school of origin if it's in the student's best interest. McKinney-Vento students have 2 schools they can attend, just 2. McKinney-Vento is not a school choice law. We all know that some parents try to make it about school choice and choosing whichever school they want to go to. That's not what McKinney-Vento is. McKinney-Vento allows a child to remain in the school of origin, which is the school they've been attending all along. It's the school they were attending when they became homeless and had to move, or the right to go to the school based on their new living address, based on the school that anyone else who lives in that neighborhood could go to. Those are the only 2 choices that a McKinney-Vento student has, so the school of origin or the zone school. And it's up to us to help those parents and the students decide which one is in the best interest. We know that most often the best interest is to keep the kid in one school, to keep the kid in the school of origin so that he or she can have a stable school experience. Every time a child moves schools, the research shows they just fall further and further behind. They miss more days, and they can never quite catch up. So most often it is in the best interest to remain in the school of origin, but there will be times when it's better for the child to go to their new home school. And it's our duty as liaisons to talk through that with the parent or guardian to determine what is in the best interest. McKinney-Vento students have the right to receive transportation to the school of origin. If the kid is going to the school that they're zoned for, there'll already be transportation, just like any other kid would get, so they're already getting it. But if they are staying at their school of origin, we are required to provide that transportation. And McKinney-Vento students have the right to support for academic success, and we provide this extra support through some paid opportunities like tutoring and the after-school care program. But most of what this is just, you at the schools working with the kids, working with the teachers, just making sure the kids are enrolled, that they're attending, that they have the supplies they need to be successful, to set them up for success so that they're able to learn in the classroom. We go over this every year, and it's worth going over this every year because we all know how many gray areas there are when determining eligibility for McKinney-Vento students. So just the more we hear it and the more we talk about it, the more clarity we can get around it, though I know just as well as you do that there's no black and white answers to a lot of these eligibility questions. But by definition, children and youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence are eligible for McKinney-Vento services. Again, I use that phrase a lot when you have questions for me, and I hope you use that phrase a lot when you're going through your cases. It's children and youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. McKinney-Vento law also goes on to give some specific examples of what that may look like. And those are the examples listed here, including sharing the housing of others due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason. We'll talk about that one in a little more detail. Living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, or campgrounds due to lack of alternative adequate accommodations. We all know that we do have some families who are living in motels and hotels by choice, and it is a long-term arrangement. It's not due to the lack of anywhere else to go. They're choosing to be in the hotel, and that would not be McKinney-Vento, but it's living in motels and hotels due to lack of alternative adequate accommodations. Trailer parks, and that definition oftentimes can cause confusion, and we all know that some trailer parks are perfectly adequate. They're fixed, regular, and they're adequate nighttime residences. So we know that would not be McKinney-Vento. The trailer parks comes into effect a little bit more in some of the smaller communities, rural communities, where there could be one trailer parked. I hear it a lot about mountain communities, parked on the side of the mountain with an extension cord running down the mountain to the nearest trailer or home to get their electricity from that other home. Again, we don't have a lot of those in Charlotte. The trailer parks around our area, most of them are fixed, regular, and adequate and would not be eligible for McKinney-Vento. Living in emergency and transitional shelters is eligible. That's much more of a given. Awaiting foster care placement, we're going to come back to that one. Living in public or private places not designed for humans to live. Living in cars, parks, public spaces, abandoned buildings. These are more obvious homeless situations. Migratory children who are living in any of the above circumstances. So just because you're migratory and you're traveling, around the country seasonally for your parents' work, does not automatically make you McKinney-Vento. It's migratory children living in any of the above circumstances. Same thing with unaccompanied youth. They're living in any of the above circumstances to be eligible for McKinney-Vento. All right, let's look a little more at the sharing the housing of others, because we know that's the one that comes up the most. We know that's the hardest one to determine if it is truly a homeless situation. But sharing the housing of others implies that the student is staying in someone else's home. It's not that person's home, that person and that person's child who's homeless. just because there's multiple people in the home. It is the student who is staying in someone else's home. And they're sharing that housing due to the loss of housing. They're not just sharing the housing by choice. They're not just sharing the housing because it's a planned arrangement. They're sharing the housing due to the loss of housing. So that implies that the student has no personal housing available. Or they're sharing the housing because of economic hardship, which would be limited financial resources, have forced the family and the children to leave. They can't pay the bills, they can't pay the rent, they really cannot afford their own place, and therefore they're sharing the housing of others. So again, it's not a roommate situation, it's not by choice, it's not a planned arrangement, it's not long-term. You have to look at the whole thing. Is it fixed, regular, and adequate? And is it sharing the housing of others due to the loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason? Awaiting foster care placement is another one that I wanted to come back to, because the law says, McKinney-Vento law says, that students who are awaiting foster care placement are eligible for McKinney-Vento. So what is awaiting placement? It is literally those kids who are waiting to be placed in foster care. Kids who are already in foster care are not homeless under McKinney-Vento. Now, granted, they have some of the same characteristics. We know they lack consistency. We know they lack stability. But again, they're not homeless. They have a stable residence to call home. The DSS system, foster care system, they do have different financial resources and other resources to offer these kids and their foster families, and therefore they would not be McKinney-Vento. And we have, as a district, gotten much better about this. I know in the last year we've done a lot of talk about it. We've had some memos come out from our legal department that have really helped clarify things. These have been shared with the Department of Social Services and other foster care groups that I think have really helped a lot and have brought some consistency to this. So again, kids who are placed into foster care already are not McKinney-Vento. Those who are waiting to be placed, who are awaiting foster care placement, are eligible. And an example of what that may look like is a kid who, for a very emergency reason, was taken from his home for his safety and was done so quickly that a placement had not been arranged for him. So for a few days, maybe even a week, he is temporarily in an emergency placement while they are looking for his foster care placement. So he is waiting to be placed. A student like that would be eligible for McKinney-Vento. But again, those who are already in foster care placement are not eligible. And the other one I wanted to discuss in a little more detail is the unaccompanied youth. As we saw on the other page, it said unaccompanied youth who are living in any of the above situations. So it's not just all unaccompanied youth are homeless. It's an unaccompanied youth who is living in a homeless situation would be eligible for McKinney-Vento. Because by definition, an unaccompanied youth is just someone who's not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. That says nothing about their homeless situation. They are just not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. So not all unaccompanied youth are homeless. There are unaccompanied youth who have a stable place to live, who have a fixed, regular, and adequate place to live. They're not living there with their legal parent or guardian, but it's also not a homeless situation. So when we're looking at unaccompanied youth, we have to remember that for McKinney-Vento, it would be an unaccompanied homeless youth, which would mean that they lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, and that they're not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. And as we're determining eligibility, we all know this. Every single case is different. It is a case-by-case determination. We can never just make a blanket statement across the board. Of course, we know it would be easier if we could, but we can't. So we have to get as much information about every individual case to make the best decision that we can. And again, it comes back to those specific examples: doubled up due to the loss of housing, in a hotel due to the lack of adequate accommodation, emergency shelter, park, public spaces, those specific examples, and then always ask yourself, Is it fixed? Is it regular? And is it adequate? All right, so what are your responsibilities? When I look at this list like this, it looks like a lot, but it's really not. We do these things. Some of you, depending on the schools that you're in, do these on a daily basis. Some of you may have to meet with the family and do this on a weekly basis. Some of you may only have this happen to you once or twice a year. But your responsibilities, number one, are to post those posters in a prominent location. Every school should have a poster. You either took one during those first few work days before school started, because I have your signature that says that you took a poster from those student support services opening in service, or I sent you one in courier because I did not have your signature that you had a poster. So every school should have a poster. Please put it up in a prominent location. If you don't have a poster, let me know and I will send you one. All right, it is the responsibility of the liaisons to complete the intake affidavits. We know that. It's our responsibility to give the parents a copy of their rights. The rights are the exact same thing that's written on the poster, and you can find copies of these rights on our intranet site. Remember, to get to the McKinney-Vento information on the intranet, it is on the federal and state compliance page. So from the intranet, you'd go to Departments, Federal and State Compliance, McKinney-Vento. From that page are many of our old PowerPoints. All of our paperwork is on that page. Links to some other websites are on that page. And parent rights are on that page too. You can print those out and make copies. All right, we have to enter things, or the responsibility to enter the program and the services into NCWIS. Also to give the cafeteria manager that little half sheet, that MCV verification for food services form. That allows the kid to begin eating immediately for free. You're going to put nutrition in NCWIS, but the nutrition department does not download every 24 hours like transportation does, so they may not see that download for a few days. So by giving that verification to your cafeteria manager or some type of communication with your cafeteria, that allows the kid to start eating for free that day. All right, every McKinney-Vento student needs to have an academic review. That is a one-page sheet. It's found on our intranet. Again, these are not guidelines that I'm just making up. These are by law things that have to happen. So every kid needs to have an academic review every year. It does not have to be every quarter, but every kid needs to have one every year. Make any necessary referrals for the family. If your school has a child's place, that would be one. Tutoring, after school care, maybe some referrals to different community agencies and resources as needed. Make sure you keep all the information in the green folders. If you need green folders, please let me know. Keep those green folders with you in your office during the school year. Don't put those in the CUME folder because, again, there's confidential information in there that you wouldn't just want anyone to see. So I would keep those green folders with you. Excuse me. Make sure that you do hold some type of training for your school staff. I have gotten documentation from many of you that you've already done that, and that's great. Thank you. I appreciate it. If you haven't had a chance yet, speak to your principal about getting on a staff meeting agenda. All you need is a few minutes. Some of you do go around to grade levels and talk. That's a great idea too. So whatever you need to do, just make your staff aware of what McKinney-Vento is and what signs to look for in their students so that they can make referrals to you. All right. And attend any district trainings that I may have. And again, this is your district training for the fall. And in the spring, we'll see how this one goes. And then in the spring, maybe we'll do another PowerPoint like this, and maybe also hold one in person too. So you can come in person if you want, or stay and watch from your schools if you want. We'll see how well this one goes over. And then you also need to review all your cases at the end of this school year. And then what's ever left open over the summer, you'll need to look at again at the beginning of next school year. But let's not just keep them open over the summer. Let's close as many as we can. So at the end of this school year, in the last couple of months of school, really start reviewing your cases and see who you can exit out. Some things we all need to keep in mind about NCYs. Make sure that the addresses, the phone numbers, and the dwelling types are updated and correct. This may be a conversation you need to have with your secretary or registrar to make sure these things stay updated, but if you have access, please check on these. That dwelling type is very important to include. A lot of times we don't, or our secretaries and registrars don't know to do it or don't know how important it is, but we have to report to DPI every year these dwelling types, and then that gets reported to the U.S. Department of Education. And so the ones that we're looking for for McKinney-Vento students are the dwelling type of a multi-family home, or those kids who are doubled up. So that's how NCYs writes it, as multi-family. Motel, hotel is a dwelling type. Shelter is a dwelling type. Unsheltered is one of the options, and that would be if a family's living in their car on the street, something like that. And homeless is actually an option too, under dwelling type, and that would be for those who have a very high rate of mobility, that if you changed the dwelling type every time they moved, you'd be changing it, once a week from motel to shelter to multifamily back to motel. So if a kid is moving that much, you can just indicate homeless, which indicates a high rate of mobility. And if you're wondering where that dwelling type screen is, it is on the basic screen of NCYs. It is the page where addresses and phone numbers are entered, and it is a drop-down box that says dwelling type. So please check your kids, make sure they all have a dwelling type entered, and discuss with your registrars the importance of entering that dwelling type for your McKinney-Vento students. All right, you make sure you enter the MCV program assignment. Any kid who you open as an MCV kid this school year, you will put the year 2012. If they become eligible in February, even though it's the year is 2013, it is still school year 2012. So any new kid who you open a program assignment for this year, no matter if it's now or if it's in May or June, the year is 2012. All right, for McKinney-Vento services, we need to make sure that these are always entered. And there are two that should be in there for every child. Nutrition assistance is a service that every child gets, and unhoused should be entered for every child. Unhoused is that confusing one that was put into NCYs a few years ago. It is not a service. This is just where the NCYs folks were able to put this designation in NCYs. What it does is it designates when a kid is truly in a current homeless situation. McKinney-Vento lasts for a school year. So a child could be in a shelter today, in their own home in February, but still McKinney-Vento until June. However, when they found their home in February, they technically were not homeless anymore. They're still McKinney-Vento for the school's sake, but they're not homeless anymore. This unhoused designation lets us capture that. So we would put a start date when we know they're homeless, and then we would put an end date for unhoused when we know they have found stable housing. So in that example, the start date for unhoused would be today's date. The end date for unhoused would be February, whatever, 2013, when the family found housing. But the kid's McKinney-Vento end date would end up being June 7th, 2013, because it would go through the end of the school year. So it is a confusing one, but it's one that we really need to try to capture better so we can say who is truly in a homeless situation at the moment. So for every student, you'll enter nutrition assistance and unhoused onto the services page. For most students, you'll enter extended transportation. If the kid is living in your school zone, you don't have to enter extended transportation because they're already going to get it. They're going to get the same transportation any other kid who lives in your zone is going to get. But if they're living outside of your zone, extended transportation has to be chosen in NCYs, or the transportation department will not see it. That is how they see it. That's the download they get, is when this extended transportation is put into NCYs. You can put it in for every kid. It doesn't hurt you to put it in for every kid, but the only ones that have to have it in there are the kids who are living outside of your school's transportation zone. So please enter that immediately so transportation can get it quickly. And then check the drop-down boxes for any other services that you may have done. It's a lot. It's a pretty lengthy drop-down box. And so check anything there that you have done. If it's tutoring, if it's after-school care, if it's a referral to an outside agency, if it's school supplies, a child's place is listed as a service. Again, check the list and identify as many services as you've done. And also unaccompanied youth is included on this services page too. So again, we know that unaccompanied youth is not really a service, it's a designation, but this is where that's captured in NCWISE, is on the services page. And like we said, for the unhoused, when a student finds stable housing, that's when you put an end date for unhoused. And then for all students who find stable housing during the school year, the program assignment and all other services should have the end date of June 7th, 2013. That's the last day of school. A few other reminders. Students who exit from McKinney-Vento at the end of this school year must go to their home school next school year. That would be the 2013-14 school year. So any kid who finds stable housing this year, who we close out from McKinney-Vento at the end of this year, will need to go to their home, well, not even need to, but must go to their home school for the 2013-2014 school year. And we did the same thing this past year, but one thing that did not happen was that NCWISE did not automatically assign the student to the next school, to the new school. And so we've learned the hard way that for this school year, at the end of the year, your secretary or your registrar will have to assign that next school in NCWISE. NCWISE will not automatically do it. So even though we've told the parent, you know, you're not homeless anymore, you're not McKinney-Vento anymore, you'll go to your home school next year, NCWISE does not know that or does not automatically download that. So your secretary or your registrar or someone on your staff, and they would know who they are, is in charge of inputting this next school into NCWISE for every student. So at the end of the year, you would give your list of students, your closed out McKinney-Vento students, to your secretary or registrar and ask them to please go into NCWISE and put the next school for that student. And our student placement office has mentioned this to me recently. That is, we know the CMS lottery for, getting into magnet schools, that has deadlines that are coming up. So if you have a student who you know is not going to be attending your school next year, they're stable or they have found stable housing, and next year they're not going to be able to attend your school, it's a good conversation to have with the parent about the CMS lottery to possibly get into a magnet school or a different school, because the parent may be counting on the fact that they're going to be staying at your school next year, even though you know they're not. So they think they're staying at your school, and therefore the lottery passes by and they don't even think that they need to apply for it because they're happy right where they are. They're happy at your school, and then next year rolls around and they find out, oh, I couldn't stay at my school. I wish I had applied for the lottery to see if I could get my child in a magnet school, and I didn't, and now it's too late. So go ahead and express to your parents that if they want to apply for a magnet school, they need to go ahead and apply for it for their kid. Go ahead and let your parents who have found stable housing by now know that, hey, next year you're not going to be able to return to our school. You're going to have to go to your neighborhood school, your home school. So if you want to apply for the lottery, please go ahead and do that. Let the parents know that that is an option for them. All right, so now what? Well, since we're not meeting in person, you obviously can't ask me any questions. So if you have any questions based on this PowerPoint, or obviously any questions in general, please always feel free to call me or email me. If you want me to come out to your school and meet with you and go over anything in more depth, please let me know that. I mean, we've taken what's usually an hour and a half to a 2-hour training, and I've thrown it into just over 30 minutes of a PowerPoint. So I'm happy to go over anything with you in more detail that you need. You just got to let me know. And then also, very important, I need you to write this statement, sign it, date it, and send it to me in courier. Not through the fax, not through the email, not a scanned copy, but an original copy with the statement. My signature below affirms that I have watched this PowerPoint presentation in its entirety. If I have any questions regarding the information in the PowerPoint, I have addressed them with the Title I McKinney-Vento specialist. Write that, sign that, date that, send it to me in courier. That is going to be your word and your proof that you did listen to this PowerPoint, and that will count as the fall training, and that will go to your your continuing ed credit in MyPD. All right, so I will be looking forward to getting a whole bunch of signed statements from you guys soon. Again, let me know of any questions, any concerns. And I can't say thank you enough for all you do. I know your plates are very, very heavy, and McKinney-Vento is just a part of it. And I thank you so much for what you do for our kids and for your schools. And just keep it up, everyone. Thank you.